In a sense, the poem's central subject, the act of climbing birch trees and riding them to the ground, is a metaphor not only for the joyful ability to find and learn from moments of spontaneous joy, but also for the speaker's complicated attachments to life on earth. Personification. The speaker personifies reality with all of the little details that make up the world as it is. But I was going to say, when truth broke in, with all her matter of fact about the ice storm. The speaker says, referring to truth as a woman and suggesting that she has interrupted the speaker's train of thought with distracting details about ice storms. This treatment of reality or truth as an actual person capable of distracting people like the speaker sheds light on the speaker's struggle to transcend the mundane details of everyday life. The speaker has already said, I like to think some boy's been swinging the trees, voicing a desire to envision an imaginative, playful scenario. Envision means, in other words, imagine. However, the speaker ends up getting sidetracked by the fact that the trees are actually bowed because they are covered in ice, not because a boy has been swinging from them. In turn, it becomes clear that the speaker has a hard time ignoring the logistical details of reality. To illustrate this dynamic, then, the speaker personifies reality itself as a matter of fact woman who butts in and makes it difficult for the speaker to gravitate toward a more inventive mindset. As a result, readers come to view reality as not only overwhelming but also as inescapable. This in turn is why the speaker later says, I would like to get away from earth a while. In other words, because truth keeps butting in and forcing the speaker to think realistically, the speaker yearns for a break from the uninteresting aspects of everyday life. With this in mind, the speaker's decision to personify reality as a distracting, matter of fact person makes sense, since this ultimately demonstrates how hard it can be as an adult to move through the world with the innocent, creative, and fun loving perspective of a child. Juxtaposition. The speaker juxtaposes, meaning brings two opposites together, the joy filled imaginative world of childhood with the uninspiring, mundane realities of adulthood. This comparison merges in multiple ways throughout the poem, as the speaker begins by expressing a desire to imagine a boy swinging through the birch trees, but then ends up thinking about the actual reason the trees are bowed, which is that they are covered in ice. Finally, though, the speaker manages to stop thinking about the effect of ice storms on the birch trees. The joyful thoughts that follow about a boy happily swinging through the birches provide a stark contrast between the adult tendency to focus on boring realistic details and the youthful tendency to seek out amusement and fun. On a smaller level, the speaker also draws a juxtaposition between heaven and life on earth. While it is true that the speaker wants to get away from earth a while, the speaker is uninterested in going to heaven. This is why the speaker only wants to climb toward heaven, hoping never to reach it because earth is the right place for love. The speaker does not think things could possibly go better in heaven, essentially framing earth as the best place to experience joyful things like love and youthful happiness. In turn, a contrast arises between everyday life and the afterlife as the speaker implies that although earth has its fair share of annoyances, dealing with these things is ultimately more rewarding than entering some kind of idealized afterlife. Simile. In lines 36 through 38, the speaker compares the cautious way the young boy climbs trees to the act of slowly filling a cup with water, a simile that makes it easier for readers to envision the boy's concentration and patience. Similarly, the speaker's assertion that life is sometimes like a pathless wood compares the experience of moving through the world to the experience of getting lost in a dense thicket of branches. Thicket is a small piece of wood. Wood here means jungle, not lakdi. By likening life to a forest without a clear path forward, the speaker encourages readers to picture an overwhelming and slightly ominous landscape. Ominous can be understood as frightening. And this in turn gives readers a sense of how the speaker views the experience of everyday life as an adult. The speaker also uses a simile in lines 18 through 20 to compare the bent birch trees and their leaves to girls on hands and knees that throw their hair before them over their heads to dry in the sun. This simile is somewhat difficult to make sense of, in part because it is so oddly specific. What exactly the bent birch trees have in common with girls drying their hair is hard to say, other than that the leaves hang down like hair. However, it is arguable that the speaker uses the simile as yet another way to associate the birch trees with youth. By creating the image of girls flipping their wet hair forward, the speaker subtly hints at an entire unspoken scene in which the girls have gone swimming and are now you casually air drying by a pool, lake, or stream. This implied scene is full of the kind of youthful spontaneity that the speaker values so highly. As such, the speaker uses the simile to imbue the birch trees with a sense of youthful joy. Form. This poem is in blank verse, with numerous variations on the form prevailing iambic foot. The commentary on the poem Birches by Robert Frost. The title is Birches, but the subject is birch swinging. And the theme of the poem seems to be more generally and more deeply this motion of swinging. The force behind it comes from contrary pulls, truth and imagination, earth and heaven, concrete and spirit, control and abundance, flight and return. We have the earth below, we have the world of the treetops and above, and we have the motion between these two poles. The whole upward thrust of the poem is toward imagination, escape and transcendence, and away from heavy truth with a capital T. The downward pull is back to earth. Likely, everyone understands the desire to get away from the earth a while. The attraction of climbing trees is likewise universal. Who would not like to climb above the fray, to leave below the difficulties or drudgery of the everyday, particularly when one is weary of considerations and life is too much like a pathless wood? One way to navigate a pathless wood is to climb a tree. But this act of climbing is not necessarily so pragmatically motivated. For the boy, it is a form of play. For the man, it is a transcendent escape. In either case, climbing birches seems synonymous with imagination and the imaginative act. a push towards the ethereal, and even the contemplation of death. But the speaker does not leave it at that. He does not want his wish half fulfilled. He does not want to be left, so to speak, out on a limb. If climbing trees is a sort of push towards transcendence, then complete transcendence means never to come back down. But this speaker is not someone who puts much stock in the promise of an afterlife. He rejects the self delusional extreme of imagination and he reinforces his ties to the earth. He says, Earth is the right place for love, however imperfect, though his face burns and one eye is weeping. He must escape to keep his sanity, yet he must return to keep going. He wants to push toward heaven, to the limits of earthly possibility, but to go too far is to be lost. The upward motion requires a complement, a swing in the other direction to maintain a livable balance. And that is why the birch tree is the perfect vehicle. As a tree, it is rooted to the ground. In climbing it, one has not completely severed ties to the earth. Moreover, as the final leap back down takes skill, experience, and courage, it is not a mere retreat but a new trajectory. Thus, one's path up and down the birch is one that is good both going and coming back. The truth of the ice storms does not interfere too long, for the poet looks at bent trees and imagines another truth, nothing less than a recipe for how to live well. A poem as richly textured as birches yields no shortage of interpretations. The poem is whole and lovely at the literal level, but it invites the reader to look below the surface and build his or her own understanding. The important thing for the interpreter is to attune her reading to the elements of the poem that may suggest other meanings. One such crucial element is the aforementioned swinging motion between opposites. Notice the contrast between truth and what the speaker prefers to imagine happen to the birch trees. But also note that truth, as the speaker relates it, is highly figurative and imaginative. Ice storms are described in terms of the inner dome of heaven and bent trees as girls drying their hair in the sun. This sort of truth calls into question whether the speaker believes there is, in fact, a capital T truth. The language of the poem, the vocabulary and rhythms, is very conversational and in parts gently humorous. But I was going to say, when truth broke in, with all her matter of fact about the ice storm. But the folksiness does not come at the cost of accuracy or power. The description of the post ice storm birch trees is vivid and evocative. Nor is this poem isolated with its demotic vocabulary from the pillars of poetic tradition. The pathless wood in line 44 enters into a dialogue with the whole body of Frost's work, a dialogue that goes back to the opening lines of Dante's Inferno. And compare line 13 with these well-known lines from Shelley's elegy for Keats, Adonais. Life, like a dome of many-colored glass, stains the white radiance of eternity until death tramples it to fragments. In birches, the pieces of heaven shattered and sprinkled to the ground present another comparison between the imaginative and the concrete, a description of truth that undermines itself by invoking an overthrown, now poetic scheme of celestial construction, that is, heavenly spheres. Shelley's stanza continues, Die, if thou wouldest be with that which thou dost seek. Frost's speaker wants to climb toward heaven and then dip back down to earth, not to reach what he seeks, but to seek and then swing back into the orbit of the world. Frost also imbues the poem with distinct sexual imagery. The idea of tree climbing on its own has sexual overtones. The following lines are more overt, means obvious. One by one, he subdued his father's trees by riding them down over and over again until he took the stiffness out of them, and not one but hung limp, not one was left for him to conquer. As are these more sensual, you may see their trunks arcing in the woods years afterwards, trailing their leaves on the ground like girls on hands and knees that throw their hair before them over their heads to dry in the sun. The whole process of birch swinging it iterates that of sex, and at least one critic has noted that Birches is a poem about erotic fantasy, about a lonely, isolated boy who yearns to conquer these trees sexually. It is a testament to the riches of the poem that it fully supports readings as divergent as those mentioned here and many more. Two more items to consider. First, reread the poem and think about the possible connections between getting away from the earth for a while, line 48, and death. Consider the viewpoint of the speaker and where he seems to be at in his life. Secondly, when the speaker proclaims in line 52, Earth's the right place for love, this is the first mention of love in the poem. Of what kind of love does he speak? There are many kinds of love, just as there are many potential objects of love. Try relating this love to the rest of the poem. Analysis. This poem is written in blank verse with a particular emphasis on the sound of sense. For example, when Frost describes the cracking of the ice on the branches, his selections of syllables create a visceral sense of the action taking place. Soon the sun's warmth makes them shed crystal shells, shattering and avalanching on the snow crust, such heaps of broken glass to sweep away, etc. Originally, this poem was called Swinging Birches, a title that perhaps provides a more accurate depiction of the subject. In writing this poem, Frost was inspired by his childhood experience with swinging on birches, which was a popular game for children in rural areas of New England. During the time, Frost's own children were avid birch swingers, as demonstrated by a selection from his daughter Leslie's journal. On the way home, I climbed up a high birch and came down with it, and I stopped in the air about 3 feet, and Pap caught me. Pap means Papa. In the poem, the act of swinging on birches is presented as a way to escape the hard rationality or truth of the adult world, if only for a moment. As the boy climbs up the tree, he is climbing toward heaven and a place where his imagination can be free. The narrator exhibits that climbing a birch is an opportunity to get away from earth a while and then come back to it and begin over. A swinger is still grounded in the earth through the roots of the tree as he climbs, but he is able to reach beyond his normal life on the earth and reach for a higher plane of existence. Frost highlights the narrator's regret that he can no longer find this peace of mind from swinging on the birches. Because he is an adult, he is unable to leave his responsibilities behind and climb toward heaven until he can start afresh on the earth. In fact, the narrator is not even able to enjoy the imagined view of a boy swinging in the birches. In the fourth line of the poem, he is forced to acknowledge The truth of the birches. The bends are caused by winter storms, not by a boy swinging on them. Significantly, the narrator's desire to escape from the rational world is inconclusive. He wants to escape as a boy climbing toward heaven, but he also wants to return to the earth, both going and coming back. The freedom of imagination is appealing and wondrous, but the narrator still cannot avoid returning to truth and his responsibilities on the ground. The escape is only a temporary one.